Our quote of the day. It's like your brain is split in two. There is a part which is forcing your body into shut down, and the other part is telling you, oh my God, what are you doing? You feel guilty for the parent or the teacher, and it's not you that's choosing this. Your brain's trying to protect you from a threat that isn't there. Even picking up a pencil can feel like a threat. PDA rarely happens because the demand is hard, but your brain tricks you into thinking it's really hard. This is actually taken from a teen contributor. There is a group called PAST in the UK, and they take contributions from individuals with PDA. And so this was taken from their website. All right. No longer discussing pathological demand avoidance. We're now looking at persistent drive for autonomy. Yes, when you're talking with professionals, it is important that you can use vocabulary on both sides. But when you're talking with caregivers, when you're talking with other teachers, it's really important that not only do you say, hey, this is known by the psychological community as pathological demand avoidance. I just want you to know that term, but let's look at it as a persistent drive for autonomy. It is really difficult to get over a barrier of caregiver buy-in when you are pathologizing behavior. And it does set the tone for receptivity in any stakeholders that you're working with. And if you're working with someone who is able to collaborate with you in a vocal capacity, the last thing they need is for you to say that their behaviors are pathological, but rather like, oh, I can see you really want to be independent right now. You really need a say in how this is going. And so that focus on it being a drive for autonomy is going to open the door for discussions in a much more compassionate and collaborative manner than focusing on it being a pathologized pattern of behaviors. Okay. All right. I have a learning challenge for us. We have, when we're talking about identifying response classes, it's always important when we're making these goals for our funders that we're being objective, everything's individualized, we're being measurable, everything is qualified. And we need to start identifying those operational definitions to review from our last our last segment, our last session. The areas that we typically see in PDA are going to be that avoiding ordinary demands, strategies of avoidance, social deficits or atypical socialization, behaviors that are an access to control, or are used to access control to items, activities, sequence. I mean, and colloquial terms, layman's terms, to anything, like to where you're positioned in the room. Current play skills, rigidity and rituals that may be present, and then what are advocacy skills. So at the end of your slides in the PDF that I shared, you'll see these forms. If you have an individual that you think is demonstrating this profile, this is a quick, let's plan this out. What are some of these things for each of the kids? Might also be helpful if you're considering referring someone out. You have this at intake. It's not something that just developed due to an intervention. It's not a reaction, but it is something that the child presented with or the caregivers are reporting. And so avoiding ordinary demands might be resistance to toilet training in young children. In adults, it could be like putting off using the toilet, like going for long times without using it, going long times without eating, or being very selective with eating, only eating on certain schedules or with certain presentation. Strategies of avoidance might be non-response. It might be that to go beyond non-response, they'll actively ignore you, like turn away from you or walk away from you. They might engage in social negotiation or bring up off-topic conversation directly or temporally located after that discriminative stimulus that was given. And then when we're looking at social deficits, it's not just they need social skills training. It's not just they don't understand. It is that they can assimilate until you actually look at the group. So these individuals that engage in these patterns, or individuals that engage in these patterns, can look like they are part of the group. And I've actually had teachers or employers as well for a couple of the adults that I've worked with who are like, oh, they're fine. They're great at work. And then when I have gone in and done observations, I have been able to see very closely they're doing great because no one's really attending to the nuance of the social situations, or because there is a group, they blend in enough. But it's taking a lot of effort to do so. Atypical socialization, one example that I'll share that's quite humorous. An 8-year-old really wanted to engage with their school psychologist. School psychologist is out in the hall, greets the kids every morning, like super happy, high fives. And 8-year-old walks up to the school psychologist and is like, Mr. X, sometimes I just don't know if it's a hard day because it's the trauma or it's the tism. And the school psychologist is like, all right, like that's a funny thing coming from an adult, but not necessarily from an 8-year-old. And when the school psychologist shared that with me, I was like, that's not something that they made up. That is a YouTube video that their older sibling watched, and their older sibling laughed at it. So they thought it was funny. So they wanted to have a socially reinforcing experience. And they thought if they shared it with someone else, they would laugh, because I've heard them say that to other people as well. And they don't understand the context, but they're really looking for that social engagement. And so what they were doing was engaging in delayed echolalia, but they were engaging in delayed echolalia as a way to access that social attention and get the same response. So I would categorize that as atypical socialization. Behaviors to access control with, for many years, people have been like, oh, I don't think, and part of the reason why I loved when PFA started emerging and really taking root as another form of assessing functions of behavior, because for many years, I heard many clinicians who were like, oh, there's got to be another function. It's for control. And I was like, well, that's an access function. But we do have some individuals that we work with that control is a huge part of their behavior repertoire. And that can be control with, you need to sit here and not here. You can't stand that way. I don't like it when your hair is this way. I don't like it when you change your hair. I want you to repeat the same words that I say, or I can't move on. I need to wear the same clothes. We need to take the same way home from school every day. So these are access to control. Play skills might be what is in their current repertoire, and how are they playing versus, when they're alone versus when they're in a group. That gives you an idea of like where they are, where can you go from here? And then what are rituals that they engage in, or rigidity, maybe with specific clothes every day, maybe where they sit in cars, maybe they have to do one routine in the same sequence every day. And then what are their advocacy skills? Do they have any? So it's really important that advocacy is not just being able to say, I need help. And I know in the school, like it's probably archived, it was months ago, but in the school group, we did have a thread talking about like how can you teach advocacy skills other than just saying I need help. And some of the ones that we have as like the go-tos that, you know, in-home ABA is known for, or school ABA is known for, because I need help doesn't always meet the need, or it makes it really hard to meet the need because there are so many things that that could mean. Okay. I'm going to go on to our next planning form as far as response class.